This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian. I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
Look, some of us are lazy, alright?
If by lazy you mean wrong.
Prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide whether the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because guess what? This film is lit.
It's Harry's third year at Hogwarts. He's taking electives, playing quidditch, and learning about his convicted murderer of a godfather. It's Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to the 29th episode of This Film is Lit. We're on to the third installment of Harry Potter in our marathon series, as we cover all of the books in Harry Potter. It's The Prisoner of Azkaban. We just got done watching it. We have some Muggle questions. We have better in the book, better in the movie. The movie nailed it. General discussion. Then we're going to pick whether the book or the movie is better. So far it's 2-0 in favor of the books. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But we're back. Also, I wanted to mention we're back on our other older mics for this one. We should be back to the other better mics next time, but this one episode I think we're gonna be on these. So let's get into our first segment, Muggle Questions.
Muggle.
Non-magic folk.
We're gonna break the Muggle questions up like we have been, or like we did on last episode, where we're gonna do like 3 at a time and do some and then go into the segments, so that way we just don't spend all of the Muggle questions right off the bat. So let's start with Trevor's first question.
Brian, Katie, my friends, thank you again for having me on This Film is Lit, Harry Potter edition. Before I get into my Muggle questions, my disclaimer, I may ask a question that'll be answered later on in the movies and or books, in which case, just tell me to wait. I'll be patient. That's fine. Second, I may ask a very dumb question, because I'm not as hardcore of a Harry Potter fan as probably your listeners are. In which case, tell me that was a dumb question and put me in my place. More than likely, I deserved it. My first question for The Prisoner of Azkaban. Why did Harry say he wanted to go to the Leaky Cauldron? Like, of all the places, why that?
So, why did Harry want to go to the Leaky Cauldron when he called the night bus? What was that about?
Well, in the book, he just says Diagon Alley.
Yes, because it's a magic place that he knows.
And his ill-formed plan is to go and get all of his money out of Gringotts,
yes,
so that he has some funds to start his life as an outcast.
Yes, because in the book, obviously, we get Harry's thoughts and what he's kind of thinking in this moment after he blows up Aunt Marge, and he goes, yeah, I'll go get my money, and then I'll go be on the lam. But he got to go to Diagon Alley to get his money, so that's kind of what he's thinking, which is why he's, like you said, he says Diagon Alley, but Leaky Cauldron is where you get into Diagon Alley. So that would be the reason why he heads for the Leaky Cauldron.
I'm not sure if it just went over my head or what, but why did the Minister of Magic not punish Harry for using magic outside of school?
Because Fudge is a weak, ineffective leader.
True. That's not the reason he doesn't punish him. The reason he doesn't punish him, because he does actually in the movie also say, Harry's like, why aren't you punishing me? I was using magic, which we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
The rules of when you can and can't use magic seem to be up in the air here. For students outside of school.
They seem a little fuzzy.
A little fuzzy in this, yeah. But Harry's like, why are you not punishing me? And he goes, we don't punish, we don't send you to Azkaban for blowing up your aunt or whatever. But the implication from the book and in the movie is that they're mainly worried about Harry being safe.
Yeah. Because
Black is after him, and so that was like their main concern, is they didn't know where Harry was after he left his parents, or after he left the Dursleys. Mm-hmm. And so they were just happy he's safe, and they're not worried about punishing him. They're just like, well, Black didn't murder you. We're all good.
It also creates a moment of contrast for a later book.
Yes. I don't remember exactly what you're talking about, but I'll take your word for it.
Is it me, or did it seem like the Dementor, targeted Harry on the train? Why did the Dementor attack Harry and not anybody else?
The reason that I always took, and it's similar in the book, it doesn't really, in the movie you see it specifically turn to Harry and
Yeah.
And it's not really necessarily what happens in the book from the description. It just kind of is there in the room, and it just affects Harry more than the others. The reason we kind of came up with from thinking on it is that, and we think this is mentioned somewhere in one of the books, maybe this one, but that they can sort of sense, since they feed on positive emotions and they feed on trauma.
Yeah.
They suck out the positive emotions or something like that. It's kind of specifically, they pull out all your positive emotions.
Yeah.
And so you're just left with their traumatic bad stuff. And that since Harry has a lot worse traumatic bad stuff than the other people that were there at the time, it sort of zeroes in on him, focuses on him, because it senses that there's a lot to work with there. So. That would be why it focuses on Harry. It's also why they explain later why it affects Harry so much. Is because of his trauma. This is how Lupin explains it to him. There's also, I saw a fun fan theory on Reddit today, that one of the other reasons it affects him so much is that because for spoilers for later books, since he has part of Voldemort's soul in him, it's also affecting Voldemort.
Interesting.
And when you think about it, that same moment is also Voldemort's greatest trauma, because it's when he died, essentially.
Yeah, that's true.
And if it's funny, if you think about it, that you're actually watching that event through the eyes of Voldemort, usually, when Harry's reliving it, and that we're actually seeing Voldemort. When Harry gets those memories of it, it's not actually his memory of it, it's Voldemort's memory of that event.
Yeah,
because we see it from the perspective of Voldemort. Yeah. And so it's not actually Harry's memory. Harry was a toddler, not even a toddler. Harry was a 6-month-old baby or whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting and kind of neat. All right, let's move on to better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
Basically all of my better in the book notes are complaints about various choices that the movie made.
Yeah, I have a lot of similar ones. So just real quick before we get into the nitpicky specific stuff, I think it's been a long time since I've seen this movie. I overall very much enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot better. I think I think it is a better film than the first two. Part of that is I think this story is just a more interesting, unique story than the first two books.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I think it just works better for a film than the first. Not that the first two are bad by any stretch. I love them both, but I think this one so far is the best film, and makes the most sense on its own, and sort of. It also helps that it has a very distinct visual style and feel and look, and the way it was shot. A lot of the stuff we talked about in the prequel episode about what Cuarón decided to do with it. And also, I really liked the way, and I didn't like this originally when I first watched it because I loved the first two so much when I was younger. I really loved the changes they made to Hogwarts and the grounds.
Yes.
And putting it in, because they went up and shot this all in Scotland, and it's all hilly and cool. I really liked what they did with Hogwarts in this one. It made it feel a lot more real and old.
Yeah.
Than the first ones.
I do think this one it's a good film. It's not a beat for beat adaptation.
No,
the
not
first two are.
None of them from here on out.
Right.
We're done with that now. That was the first two.
And I had forgotten how much they changed from book to movie for this one. And I think the movie does a good job of a lot of cuts got made, and I think the movie did a good job of cobbling the pieces back together. Yeah, so that we got an understandable story still.
But there are some big things that they cut, and again, this is the theatrical version as far as we know. So there may be deleted scenes that include some of this other stuff, but there's some pretty big cuts that are specifically one we'll get to towards the end that's like, why would you not include? That's really important. But we'll get there. So what was it? Let's just kind of start breaking it down. We talked about it though. Outside of school, who can use magic and who can't is very clear in the book. Students not
supposed to use magic.
Not supposed to use magic during the summer outside school. In this one, they say that. In the movie, they say that, but then also Harry is doing Lumos.
Yeah, he's doing
under his
Lumos
sheets.
at the beginning, and it's such a strange choice because it's literally a plot point of the beginning of the movie that he wasn't supposed to be using magic, but they have him doing that.
Yeah. And now, it's. I thought that was very strange. I'm like, did you get confused there or what was going on? I thought that was really interesting because, they're like, you can't, because he says that. Fudge says it. Vernon says it once.
Yeah.
But he's just doing Lumos up in his room and that's fine. But then he blows up his aunt and that's an issue. It was very strange. Maybe they were like in the universe, there's some sort of exception for schoolwork.
Maybe.
Because he is like looking at a book, like a textbook.
Yeah, he's like looking at a textbook.
So,
I don't know. Maybe he's supposed to be practicing something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. But it's a little fuzzy in the movies and confusing in a way that it's not in the book. It's pretty clear. Other than my nitpick about, like, they can't seem to tell who's doing the magic in the book universe because he gets in trouble when Dobby does it.
Right.
And it's like, so if you live in a house with adult wizards, can they use magic? Can you use magic?
You would think so. Yeah, you would think if you're living with a bunch of other wizards, like some adult wizards who aren't in school,
the kids could do it, and
they can just do
they would never
they
know
want.
if it was them or the parents. So that's a little fuzzy, but the rules actually make sense and are enforced in the book. The phone call with Ron isn't in the movie.
Yeah,
I love that gag. Ron tries to call Harry. Harry gives Ron his phone number at the end of the last school year, and Ron tries to call and ends up screaming into the receiver, and there's a really funny exchange between Uncle Vernon and Ron.
Yeah.
It's very comical, and I would have liked to see. Oh, one other little thing that the movie doesn't include that I thought was interesting and cool in the book is that Sirius Black is on Muggle News.
Yeah.
And they had an opportunity to do it here because they're watching TV with Marge. Would have been really easy to have a news report about him on the TV. But there is several times where it's mentioned that Black is being, that the non-wizarding world is being told about Black.
Yes.
Because the Ministry of Magic works with the Muggle government, basically, to kind of keep them in the loop on stuff. Like when super important, dangerous criminals are out running around. And I thought that was cool. Like, that's a cool idea that that information gets shared. And that, it just makes it feel more real.
Yeah, and that's our first inkling throughout the series that they would share stuff with the Muggle community. Yeah. And we see that more later.
Yeah. And I thought that was... I'm just surprised that wasn't... Like I said, they had a prime opportunity when they're sitting around there with the TV on.
Yeah.
To just have a news thing. It doesn't even have to focus on it. It could just pop up, and the second time you watch the movie, you notice, oh, that was Black on Sirius on the news. Like, but it was just a little, disappointed they didn't do that. All right, we're out. Let's get to the night bus, because that's where I'm at here now.
Okay, I've never liked the shrunken head.
I'm not a fan of the shrunken head.
Not a fan at all.
Well, I actually have the night bus overall in a later segment, but I don't like the shrunken head. I'm not a big fan of that. It's just unnecessary, but whatever. The main thing I don't like about that they don't do with the night bus that is in the book that I'm a big fan of that I like is that the description of when the night bus like drives all over the curb and stuff, the items on the street and like street lamps and like mailboxes jump out of the way of the night bus.
Yeah,
which is it doesn't really make sense. But I don't know, it's a fun visual, and I thought that would have been fun to have, like, them when he mounts up on the curb and, like mailboxes and stuff are, like, magically jumping out of the way. Again, I'm not sure it really makes sense, but... One little line that makes me laugh every time I read the book, and I was disappointed it wasn't in there, once he gets to the Leaky Cauldron, he has a room, he ends up staying at the Leaky Cauldron for, like, 2 weeks, and at one point, after he finds out about Black, and that Black is... potentially after him or whatever. There's a line where he's sitting in his room and he says out loud to himself to kind of reassure himself. He goes, "I am not going to be murdered." And it's established earlier that there's a talking mirror in this room that like will talk to you in his room he's staying in. And he says, "I'm not going to be murdered." And the mirror says, "That's the spirit, dear." And it just always makes me laugh because it's just so like, I wasn't expecting the mirror to respond to him. And it just...
There was another little line in the book that made me laugh out loud. too, that I had forgotten about. When he goes to Flourish and Blots, they have all the monster book of monsters in like a big cage, and the shopkeep says something to the effect of like, "This is worse than the time we had the invisible book of invisibility.
Yeah,
we spent a fortune. We never found them.
Yeah, yeah, it was good. I missed that they kind of do set this up a little bit, because we see the horseless carriages once they get to school. And we see the horseless carriages, but I was a little disappointed. I guess there's not really... They showed all they could, I guess, at this point. In the book, it's mentioned specifically, Harry says, because this is the first time he's ridden in the horseless carriages, because the first years take the boat across the lake, and then the second year they flew in the car so they didn't get there in time to take the carriage. But this eventually sets up, it kind of teases in the third book here towards the Thestrals eventually, because we actually find out they're not horseless carriages. They are being drawn by invisible
creatures,
demon horse things.
Most people can't see.
And I think the movies, if I remember correctly, abandon the Thestrals like entirely. I don't think they even... I could be wrong about this. It's been a long time since I've seen the later ones. But I'm thinking we might not ever even get the Thestrals.
I think they might be in the fifth movie, but
do they show up?
Don't quote me on that.
Well, I'll be surprised or interested to see in going forward. But so there's a little bit of a kind of a setup, just like a little world building setup for the Thestrals eventually when he kind of mentions the horseless carriages, and we do see them in the movie. But I missed Sir Cadogan.
Oh, yeah.
In the movie, Sir Cadogan he's in the movie. He's in the background. You see him several times. At least I assume that's probably supposed to be him. Sir Cadogan is a knight who they helps them find divination on their first day, but also eventually starts guarding their...
He's a portrait.
He's a portrait of a knight.
Yeah.
And after the fat lady gets slashed with a knife, he takes over to guard the...
And he's crazy.
But he's like really silly.
He's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
And he just has great lines, and I wanted just like one of those interactions of him, the back and forth he has with them is always really entertaining.
Yeah, he really commits to like the knight dialect and aesthetic and all that.
Yeah, like when they're looking for the tower for divination the first day, they come up to him and they're like, "We're looking for the North Tower. You don't know the way, do you?" "A quest!" The knight's rage seemed to vanish instantly. He clanked to his feet and shouted, "Come follow me, dear friends, and we shall find our goal, or else shall perish bravely in the charge." "Oh, on foot then, good sirs and gentle lady, on!" Like I just wanted that at some point, like just a quick. But again, you do see him in the background numerous times, sort of a knight. I assume it's him. But yeah, we don't get any lines with him.
One thing that I've never really liked about this movie is, I don't even know like how to describe it, but like when the Dementors come and they're like being Dementors, and it like there's an effect where it looks like they're like pulling your face off.
Yeah, it's like they're like sucking your soul, kind of.
Yeah,
slightly.
I mean, I get what it's supposed to symbolize. I just think it looks dumb.
I actually kind of like it. I think it looks all right. I don't think it's necessary. I think they felt they needed some way to sort of visualize it affecting people.
Yeah,
and
I get it.
I don't think it's terrible looking. I think it looks all right, but that's a very subjective thing. If you don't like it, that's fair. In the movie, so in the book, when they're tackling the boggart, it's described that when Lupin confronts it, it turns into a glowing orb. But we don't get like a very detailed description. They say like it was a glowing orb.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Okay. In the movie, it is very clearly the moon.
Very clearly the moon.
Very clearly the moon. There's like clouds and stuff around it, and it's a little. I get why probably they changed it for the sake of making it a little more obvious so people could hopefully figure it out. Because, I mean, the book gives you some hints, but it would be really tough to figure it out from just reading the book. Like, unless you kind of knew, unless there was more allusions to, like, it being a full moon when he's sick or something, like, or when he's not there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a little disappointed that they just changed it to straight up just be a moon. Like, that's just a moon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think there's a line in the book where somebody says, like, I wonder why he's afraid of crystal balls or something
they
like
do,
that.
Yeah. This is a kind of a mixture of better in the... It's not... I don't know. I don't understand why they changed it, but I think it makes sense in the book that they learn about Animagi and Transfiguration from an Animagus. Because Professor McGonagall is an Animagus, and she's the one who teaches them about it.
Yeah.
They slam that together with the werewolf lesson that Snape gives, which does happen in the book, where he gives a lesson about werewolves, hoping one of the students will figure out that Lupin's a werewolf. But they kind of cram that together with the Animagus part and don't have it with Professor McGonagall, which I get it. You gotta trim it and cut and fit
it's
things
not a
in.
terrible change.
No, it makes sense. It's just, it makes a lot more sense for Professor McGonagall to teach him about it. And it's actually the time we see, this is the first time in this book where the students see her turn into a cat. Because that happens in the first movie. Like, their first day of Transfiguration, she jumps off the desk as a cat. And that supposedly, like, they all freak out. Not freak out, but they're, like, blown away when she does it in this book. So it's, like, the first time they've seen her do it, apparently.
Also in that scene with Snape, Snape says, he calls Hermione an insufferable know-it-all.
Yeah.
In that scene. Which I'm pretty sure he also does in the book, or he says something similar.
He does, yeah. I don't remember the
But
exact.
the movie has Ron say he's got a point, you know?
Oh, yeah, but no,
and
Ron
I
defends
hate
him.
that.
Yeah.
Ron always defends Hermione. That's a constant throughout the books, especially to Snape. He always comes to her defense.
Yeah.
And I hate that the movie did that.
It is weird to make that change, because, he wouldn't, I mean, he has his own issues with her, which they drop, which is a thing that's disappointing, which I have here at some point. But yeah, when it comes to other people, he always defends her. Yeah, he does say 5 more points from Gryffindor for being an insufferable know-it-all. Oh, and yeah, because Ron defends her. Ron says, you asked us a question and she knows the answer. Why'd you ask if you didn't want to be told? Yeah, that's a dumb change.
Yeah.
I agree. Having him kind of side with Snape there doesn't make any sense. They drop all the Quidditch. Most of the Quidditch. Except for the first match, which is technically the most important one story-wise.
Right.
Where he falls off the broom. But there's a whole season's worth of Quidditch. It's the first time we get all of the Quidditch games. And Gryffindor ends up winning the Quidditch Cup, and it's a very interesting, they lose the first game, and then there's all this different stuff goes on, enabling them to ultimately win in the final game. But one of the weird changes is during the first game, which they do include, Harry actually sees Sirius Black watching him play Quidditch. He sees the dog in the stand somewhere. Yeah. Whereas in the movie, they change it to him just seeing a cloud shaped like a dog, and that doesn't really make any sense. Yeah, because
it doesn't. It looks cool.
It looks cool. I mean, it makes sense in the idea of him like being paranoid about it and seeing the Grim and that sort of thing. Like, it's fine from that regard.
Yeah.
But it's very specifically, he sees there because Sirius came to watch him play because he wanted to see, to see him. And so I thought that was weird to not have him just see the dog. Again, I guess it's more visually like, whoa, but it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. So we get multiple Hogsmeade visits in the book. I understand why they kind of combined that all into one.
Yeah, it all got kind of crushed into one.
Like, there are multiple visits in the movie, but all of the events that happen the one time we see them go happen over the course of, like, several different visits. Like, the encounter at the Shrieking Shack with Malfoy and that is, like, one visit, and then the thing where he finds out about Sirius Black is, like, a different one. And they just kind of smush it all together, which, again, I get why. You got a lot of stuff to get through.
Right. And again, it's not a terrible choice. It's a good way to, like I said, like, kind of cobble those different events together. Yeah. But also, they had him steal Neville's lollipop. Yeah. And I have never understood, like, Harry wouldn't do that.
No.
Come on now.
No. And he's not dumb enough to just let it float around in midair as he's walking down the street.
A floating lollipop. Look at that.
So this is weird, and this doesn't make any sense. When Harry finds out about, in the movie, Harry finds out about Black betraying his parents and getting them killed. The movie, they say that Pettigrew went and tried to warn the Potters, but that Black got to him first, and that's when he killed him.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
But that order of events makes no sense, because Black switched with him, Black went and confronted Pettigrew after the Potters died.
Right.
Because he realized Pettigrew sold him out.
He was the only one who knew that they had made Pettigrew their secret keeper at the last second.
Yeah.
Everybody else thought it was Black.
Yeah, they also dropped this whole secret keeper thing in the movie. They don't mention what that is. So in the movie, they just sort of like, only a few people knew where the Potters were. It was a secret. And Black was one of the people who knew where they were. That's not what goes down in the book. In the book, it is specifically a spell that they do, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but that where a person is selected as a secret keeper, and that person was going to be Sirius Black, who was going to be the only person who knew where the Potters were.
Right.
And that when they did this spell, that literally, I think the example they give in the book, he says Voldemort could put his face to their living room window and wouldn't know they were there.
Right, as long as the secret keeper doesn't squeal.
As long as the secret keeper doesn't, give up the secret. And Black was like, they, the idea was that Black would never give up their secret. And I still think it's a little weird of him to have decided to switch to Pettigrew. Yeah. His reasoning is, well, they wouldn't suspect that it would be Peter Pettigrew and they'd come after me. And now I can't remember if in later books Sirius comes to terms with talks about that in a way where he reflects on it and thinks like maybe he was cowardly or like maybe he was afraid or scared and that's why he switched it to Pettigrew. I don't remember if that ever comes up because it does seem like a weird choice to make. Yeah. If the whole point of the spell is that unless you give it up, like unless you spill the secret, it doesn't matter if they know that you have, like, I mean, yeah, there's a chance they could come after him and kill him, but like the whole point is that he was brave enough and right, honorable enough that he wouldn't care, or that he would keep that secret to his death. And so I wonder if there's an element of him sort of coming to terms with the fact that maybe he was scared. Like, I don't remember in the later books if that's an element that gets discussed or not. Because it kind of seems like it would have to be. Like, why would he have done that otherwise? I mean, the reason he gives is, they would never suspect Peter Pettigrew. But it's like, okay, but even if they suspect you, it doesn't matter. Like, unless you're scared of them coming after you. Right. So.
Here's the thing that I want to know about the Secret Keeper spell. Could Sirius and James not have been each other's Secret Keepers? Make like an infinite loop.
An infinite loop of Secret Keepers. Yeah, so that's an interesting. So he's secret keeper of their location. James, secret keeper of his location. Boom, done.
No one will ever find
either of them. You found it. You found a hole in the system. I don't love that they dropped the whole rift between Ron and Hermione. Yeah. In the book, it's very obvious it looks very obvious that Crookshanks absolutely ate Scabbers, and Scabbers does disappear, and they kind of mention this, and there's a slight tiff for a while, or for a scene where Ron's
there's
mad
like
at her.
One scene where they're fighting about it.
Yeah. But they don't even go through the lengths that the book, like there's like blood on the sheets, and like it seems very obvious that Crookshanks ate Scabbers.
Pettigrew once again fakes his own
death.
And leaves behind some evidence.
Yeah.
And the fight between Ron and Hermione in the book is very drawn out. Like, they don't speak to each other months. For a good portion of the book.
Yeah, there's a good portion of the book where they like don't talk. And this happens throughout in multiple books where there are rifts between Ron and Harry, or Harry and I don't know if Harry and Hermione ever really have a falling out, other than like the first book maybe.
I don't think they do.
Yeah, but like Ron and Harry and Ron and Hermione and that sort of thing. It happens numerous times, and it just always felt really realistic, and like they're not just always perfect friends. They have things that cause issues between them, and I was a little disappointed that they didn't. They have it. It's there. It's just not, and it's hard to have that same feeling of this rift for months when it's a movie and you can't really express it in the same way. But I wish they had the Christmas dinner with 12 people. Yes. In the book, there's a scene. There's a great scene in the book where there's so few people stayed for Christmas break that they literally are like sitting at one table in the Great Hall. It's like Dumbledore and Snape and McGonagall and like Flitwick, and then like 6 students or something like that. It's like Harry, Ron, Hermione, and then like a few others. And it was just a fun scene. And there's also a great banter between McGonagall and Trelawney, which I love that McGonagall just doesn't get, like, fucking has... Her and Hermione having no time for divination is one of my favorite things in this book. But they have a great spat during that Christmas dinner.
I'll be honest, I never liked the look of the werewolf.
It's all right.
In this,
it's not my favorite werewolf. It's very, like, grotesque.
Yeah, it's very like it almost looks alien.
Yeah. So I'm getting to the final climax here. Some things that I think the book does better is I like that, or some little things when Buckbeak supposedly gets executed. I like that they hear Hagrid, like, sobbing, and they don't, and so it just helps sell the idea that they killed Buckbeak. Turns out he was, like, sobbing with joy, basically.
Yeah.
But I have a little thing like that. I don't love the actual Whomping Willow action scene in the movie.
Oh my god, when Hermione grabs his shirt.
She grabs the thing and is getting
flings him around.
Yeah, and then grabs Harry and throws it. I'm not a fan of that.
She must be very strong.
I'm not a fan of that. I think it's a little dumb. In the book, it's just Crookshanks shows up.
Yeah.
And which they kind of cut Crookshanks out from that whole end, Crookshanks is sort of an important character for everything that goes on in that final act. And they kind of cut Crookshanks out completely. But
well,
Crookshanks
probably couldn't make the cat do what they wanted it to do.
That's fair. I guess they didn't want to CG a cat in. But the cat comes up and knows how to... There's a knot on the tree that you touch.
Yeah,
that stops
the whole
the tree
thing
from
freezes.
Moving. And Crookshanks does that so they can get in. And then Peter Pettigrew used to do it as a mouse when they were kids, which that's a whole thing we'll get to here in a second.
Well, as long as we're in the climax, I have also never liked that a little ball of light comes out of Sirius's mouth.
Yeah, that's strange. I don't know what that is. No, I know it's his soul. Like, that's,
right.
The idea
it's
is
a visual aid.
It's the visual of them doing the kiss, but they're not doing the kiss. They're just flying around, and some reason that makes his soul come out. I don't love it. I don't necessarily. I guess I get what they were going for, of like to raise the stakes and like, oh look, he's so close. He's good. They're gonna suck his soul out. But yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Or they could have done what they did in the book, where one of them grabs Harry and pulls his hood back, and you see its horrific,
why didn't they do that?
Face.
Oh yeah, holy cow! I forgot about that. That is way better because in the book, they grab one of them grabs Harry and is about to kiss him, and you see their face, and it's terrifying and gross. And then they all get kicked. The reason they all get kicked out of Hogwarts at the end of the book is because one of them tried to fucking kill an innocent kid. And they're like, Dumbledore's like, get the fuck out of here. Whereas in the movie, there's no real reason for them not to still be there.
Yeah.
Because Black is still at large, and they nothing has really changed. But yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you get to see them without their hood on, which is described in vivid, terrifying nature of them having like sunken gray skin where their eyes should be. They don't have eyes, and they just have a hole in their. Ugh. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do that. That's weird. In the movie, Harry chokes Sirius Black when he gets into the Shrieking Shack, but in the book, he like goes out and starts beating the shit out of him, which I thought was interesting. Like Harry like literally is like punching the shit out of him and stuff, and like gives him a black eye. Whereas the movie, they do a little bit of it, like he runs up and like grabs him, but then it kind of quickly dissipates, and I just thought that was, I don't know, potentially felt more real in the book that he like actively just like starts beating the shit out of him. Really disappointed that they cut floating Snape body. So after Snape gets knocked out, I like too in the book that when Snape shows up in the Shrieking Shack at the end, which happens the same in the movie, he shows up, and at this point, Harry, Ron, and Hermione are starting to get slightly convinced by the story that they're being told about Pettigrew and stuff. And in the book, they all three Expelliarmus him at the same time,
which is why it
throws him against the wall and knocks him unconscious. It's not just Harry, which I thought was fun, or thought was cool, because they weren't they all three sort of just did it at the same moment. But so in order to get Snape out, as they're going back up to the school, they levitate his body vertically
like a marionette,
like a marionette puppet, and they float him down the hallway, and they like bang his head into all the doorways as they go. And I really was hoping you would see that in the movie, because that would have been fun. But they cut that out completely.
Although I also like the implication that they just fucking left him there. Yeah,
they just leave him in the Shrieking Shack, because that makes sense too. They're like, fuck you, like you know where you're at. You can find your way back. I'm not gonna carry you there. Oh, okay, some big changes in the movie that don't make sense. With the end, with the climax, with the Patronus on the water. So in the book, it is vividly described that a stag erupts from the wand. Well, from Harry's perspective, the first time when he's on the side of the beach with Sirius and he's like, passing out, he just sees a glowing. He thinks it looks like a unicorn. He can't really tell what it is.
Yeah.
But a glowing four-legged hoofed animal running around and like charging down the Dementors. And I'm like, that's fucking cool. And then when Harry casts it eventually, like when they loop the time and he comes back and realizes it was him on the other side of the lake doing it and not his dad, he casts the spell and the stag bursts out and it literally is described as charging down the Dementors and like, just chasing them off basically.
Yeah.
And it's really disappointing that in the movie it's just, well, one, they do two different things which don't make sense. When Harry watches it from this was very strange, and I don't remember this being the case it's really weird. When Harry sees it from the beach, as when he's sitting there with Sirius the first time, we see a stag.
Yes.
Standing on the other side of the thing.
Yes.
It stands there, and light radiates from it, and it scares away the Dementors.
Yeah, like giant waves of
like
light.
White light, which I was like, nah, all right. Yeah, at least there's a stag there, but that's boring.
Yeah.
Like, because again, in the book, this thing chases him down and like chases him off, and we see more of this in later movies. I think, like when they start, I don't know. Well, I can't remember. I know when they start doing Patronuses in later movies that we might see. It might be more like what I thought it should look like. But at least the stag was there. Then when Harry loops around and he realizes it's him and he walks out in the movie, when he casts it, it just shoots waves of light out.
Yeah, we don't see the stag.
We don't see the stag at all. Which
is really weird.
It's really weird because we saw it earlier.
Yeah.
And now it's not there. It was very confusing and I didn't get it, and it's also just dumb. Like here's what it is. Here's what I think is that they wanted the moment. The reason this happens is the reason they changed it so that instead of a stag barreling around and chasing down the Dementors, one, that would probably be a lot harder to animate than it is just to have waves of light coming out and scare them. But I don't think that at this point the movies make enough money and they have talented enough, I don't think that's like a really big deciding factor. I think what they wanted though is they wanted that moment of Harry holding the wand and the light on him where his hairs go, like in the later movies, like when what they wanted was the end of the fourth book where he shoots the Expelliarmus and they hit and they're like pushing back and forth and all the people are coming out, like that moment where you're like, he's like screaming, and like this big powerful climax moment, because otherwise it's like Harry casts it and then he stands there on the beach
and watches
it. You know what I mean? It's not so like I get what they were going for, but it's so much less cool than the actual stag coming out and chasing Dementors down.
No, I agree, and I think regardless of whatever kind of change you're going to make, you have to be consistent. Within your own
just
story.
make it consistent. That was the weirdest thing that I was like, wait, they did it differently both times. That's really weird. Why would they do that? Because we saw the stag the first time and now, all right, whatever. Speaking of the stag, holy shit, they don't remotely explain the Moony Wormtail Padfoot Prongs or the Marauders map at all in the movie.
They do not.
At all.
That's like huge gaping plot holes.
Yeah, that they just don't remotely try to round up.
Yeah.
So if you were unaware, if you've just watched the movie, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs are the nicknames of James, Sirius, Pettigrew, and Remus when they were in school, because they became Animagi, and they don't go through any of this backstory, because Lupin was a werewolf. He used to go to the Shrieking Shack and hang out there when he was a werewolf, and it was the first time he ever got to go to school because Dumbledore made this exception where he could come and hang out in the Shrieking Shack whenever he was a werewolf for a month, and that way he wouldn't hurt anybody, and then he could actually go to school. And Remus became friends with James Potter Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew, and in order they found out that he was a werewolf, and they decided to learn to be animagi in order to like hang out with him while he was a werewolf.
Yes.
And like keep him in line. Like James turns into a giant deer with, huge antlers, and Sirius Black turns into a giant black dog, and then Pettigrew specifically turned into a rat specifically so that he could turn the Whomping Willow off, pretty much. Like, that was what they said. Like, he was small enough that he could get up there without getting hit by the tree to stop the Whomping Willow.
Hit the off button.
I was like, oh, what I think he might have had a little... I understand why he turned on you guys. You're like, all right, you could turn into a little rat and go turn the tree off, and we're going to turn into giant badass animals and run around with a werewolf. You just turn the tree off. Like, maybe you guys weren't the best friends. I don't know. They never explain that. They never explain that... The movie never explains that it was... So we see the Marauders map says Moody Wormtail Pad from Prongs, but we never explain that, they wrote that map. Yeah. That it was Harry's dad and Remus and Sirius and them that wrote the Marauders map. That's not explained at all. It's just very... Right? Unless I missed a line where Remus was like, I don't think so. Yeah.
And like I said at the beginning, I do think that the movie did a pretty good job of cobbling things together.
That was one of the biggest ones, was just leaving that out.
But my biggest issue with this adaptation overall, I think, is that there was stuff like that left out, and there was stuff that got like really crushed together, like everything that happened at the Dursleys.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the movie just like got crushed and crammed together, and so much of it got cut, which I understand. Yeah. But then also there's a lot of stuff in this movie that's like world building / aesthetic that, while cool, doesn't really serve any purpose. Like the fat lady singing and breaking the glass, or like the boys trying all the different candies that make them make animal sounds.
I didn't mind that scene, at least in the sense that I thought it did a good job. The animal candy scene, I thought it did a really good job of, because the end of that chapter, when Harry gets there, there's a line about how he finally feels like he's home or something like that. At the end of that chapter, when he goes into his dorm and crashes out. And I thought that was a good way to kind of show that without having Harry just go, wow, like look wistfully around the room. You know what I mean? I thought it was fine. But yeah, they do add some more stuff that's not in the books.
My point is that they're adding stuff, or then there's like a 30-second scene where a bird flies around and gets hit by the Whomping Willow. Yeah. And I'm like, why are we adding like this stuff and then cutting things that are actually relevant to the story? That's my biggest issue with this as an adaptation.
That's fair. I don't think that I said the bird thing. We get that with the Whomping Willow for the season changes to kind of help us realize where we are in the year. Yeah, like we see the different seasons as we go, and also reminding us about the Whomping Willow from the last movie, and that because that ends up playing an important part again. Yeah,
so I mean I get it, but the bird like flies all over the grounds first.
Right. Fair enough. A couple other things that the book has that I was missing from the movie is because they cut all the other Quidditch, the Malfoy dressed as a Dementor, and Harry shoots a Patronus at him in the book and scares the shit out of him, which is fun and would have been fun to see in the movie, but that we don't get any of the other Quidditch games, so we don't get that. A McNair, the Executioner. In the movie, the Executioner that comes for Buckbeak is just a nameless guy in a hood with a giant axe. Just
some guy.
He is a named character.
He's really into his job.
Yeah, and he's a named character in the book, and his name's McNair, and it's important because we eventually find out later that he's a Death Eater. Yeah. And he ends up showing up in later books, and they fight against him as a Death Eater later, so... we get a really important line, a little tidbit for the fifth book in the third book here that is not in the movie. After which they realize that Professor Trelawney making that prediction was like important, where she like goes into a trance and like makes a prediction, but we don't ever come back to that or readdress it in the movie. In the book, Harry mentions that to Dumbledore after everything's sort of resolved. He's like, oh, the other... Professor Trelawney, like, I think she, like, went into a trance and told me all this stuff, and he explains it, and Dumbledore's like, yeah, that probably was real. He goes, If that's correct, then Professor Trelawney will have made her second correct prediction.
Yeah.
And that's a very important line.
He says, like, I laughed out loud at it, actually, because
he goes, maybe I should give her a raise or something like that.
Perhaps I should give her a raise.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that just nobody takes it divination seriously. It's my favorite. Hermione going off on it, and she goes off on it more even in the book than she does in the movie. Like when she quits the class and stuff, she's just like openly mocking it, and I love it. It's so fun. But yeah, the second accurate prediction is and that's a setup that we have no idea what that means at this point. With in book 3, we're like, well, what was her first accurate? What was that? As we'll find out later, it has to do with the prophecy, which we get in book 5.
Yes. When
they get into the Department of Secrets. What was it called? Mysteries?
The Department of Mysteries, I think it was.
Yeah. It's in the Ministry, but it's like one of the... Wow, it's been a long time since I've read that one. or watched that movie, so... Yeah, but anyways, I thought that they don't mention that at all in the movie. And then, also, they don't show Ron's new owl. No. Ron gets a new owl at the end of this book. He gets a pigwidgeon?
Teeny little puffball
Sirius sends Harry a letter while they're on the Hogwarts Express, and it's a little tiny owl that comes with it, and then he just says, hey, Ron can have that since it's my fault he doesn't have a rat anymore. Which is fun. That would have been a better ending than this freeze frame woohoo firebolt ending that we got. But
one way the book is better is that it doesn't end with a freeze frame.
I remember in theaters going, oh, all right. Like when it freeze frames on Harry's face as he flies past the camera. Like,
that was a choice.
That was definitely a choice. Let's go back and do a few more Muggle questions.
Do Dementors only guard Azkaban? Is that their only goal in life is to be a guard of a prison? Do they have other dreams? Other hopes? Do they do anything else besides guard a prison?
The Dementors, they just guard... Is all they do exist to guard Azkaban?
As far as we know?
I would have to read the Fantastic Beasts for this, I think. Yeah. They're probably mentioned in there if I had to guess. My understanding is that these Dementors are creatures that the Ministry or that wizards found in the world somewhere and realized they could basically employ them as prison guards.
Yeah.
Because as long as they throw people in the prison for the Dementors to suck the soul out of, the Dementors are all cool and happy and just hang out there. And it's also a very effective way to keep people from getting out of prison because it's also incredibly inhumane. And somebody needs to Hermione needs to get on this and be like, what was this Azkaban thing? We shouldn't be doing this. This isn't a good thing to do. This is really not a good thing. But they pretty much just guard Azkaban. But the idea is that there are some sort of creatures that were out in the world somewhere that probably did their own thing.
Right.
And then we sort of struck up a loose pact with them.
Yeah.
And now there is eventually... They come into play with Voldemort's return, and he ends up basically stealing them. Mm-hmm. There's moments in later books where it becomes clear that the Dementors have left Azkaban.
Yeah, and they don't have any kind of allegiance.
No. And basically...
they work for whoever can offer the most warm bodies.
Yeah, and Voldemort goes, I'm going to set you loose on everyone. You can go out and just suck the souls out of everybody you see. So, yeah, that comes out in later things, but in later books. But they pretty much right now just hanging out at Azkaban because they get free food.
Was anybody else concerned about playing Quidditch in a thunderstorm? Children flying through the clouds? Thunder and lightning happening? Nobody?
I did have concerns about playing Quidditch in a thunderstorm. Apparently, it's like...
It's an all-weather sport.
It's an all-weather sport. They don't stop for any inclement weather. If it's raining or whatever, they don't care. I will say that flying around in a thunderstorm is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
As one of the kids gets struck by lightning in this movie, which doesn't happen in the book. But it's a terrible idea, but... They're wizards. I guess their medicine's good enough that even if somebody gets struck by lightning, they're fine. I guess somebody will just fix them. But it's definitely not the safest of things.
The Expecto Patronum spell charm. I can't remember now exactly what it was called. Do you need a boggart to practice with that? Do you need anything to practice with? Why can't you just practice like they practice anything else? Or do you need the stimulus to make it happen?
So practicing Expecto Patronum, do you need a boggart, or can you just do it? So in the book, this is mentioned, Harry practices it the first time before they open the chest and actually does create a small...
Yeah, like a little bit of a...
wisp of a Patronus without the Dementor there to come at him. But I think the idea is just that being able to do it in the presence of a Dementor is much harder. We actually see it in book 5. In movie 5, we see them making Patronuses, like during the Dumbledore's army stuff. They're like practicing Patronuses, and we see them like shooting them out all over the place with no Dementors around. So I think it's easier to do, actually, if there aren't Dementors around. The idea is that being able to do it with the Dementor around is way harder.
That's when you want to be able to do it. So you would want to practice it at some point with an approximation of a Dementor, at least. Yeah, and this is the thing that I always thought was very interesting about the boggart. So I guess the idea is that it literally does turn into a Dementor. Because otherwise, why would a Patronus work on it? Yeah. Because we find out the way you stop boggarts are by using ridiculous. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And turning them silly and then laughing at them and whatever. And laughter finishes them off or whatever. But I think the thing that I thought was interesting is like, but the Patronus does work against the Dementor boggart, and it's like, why would it? Well, it's that too, and the boggart Dementor also affects Harry.
That's what I mean. Sorry, and the boggart Dementor drains Harry and like sucks, which I thought was weird. I'm like, so like it actually becomes a Dementor?
I mean, unless it's supposed to be some kind of like psychosomatic power of suggestion thing.
Yeah, but I just remember thinking that was very strange. Yeah, like it's like, so I guess it's when it becomes the moon, it doesn't actually become the moon and affect the gravitational forces on Earth like in a crazy way. Whenever Lupin has it hit him, but you don't have to have a boggart. You can practice your Patronus without it, but he just wants to do it with the boggart so that it's because you have to be able to do it under those conditions. So
it's something akin to practicing driving actually on a road.
Yeah, as opposed to like in a parking lot.
Yeah, you can start out in a parking lot, but eventually you're going to want to go out on the road.
Yeah. All right, that was a few more Muggle questions. Let's go to better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
I actually have quite a few things for this. I don't know how many you have.
I only have a few things.
Okay. We drop the rehash. The book gives us another rehash of background on Harry and Hogwarts and everything. And I was like, again, really? When do we stop doing this in the books? The movie obviously gets rid of that, which is, for me, always good because it's unnecessary. I think it was fun in the movie that Marge floats away completely.
Yes.
Into the sky.
Yeah.
Because in the book, she just blows up and is floating against the ceiling, essentially.
Yeah, the movie really escalates it.
Yeah. And
although I think it does create more of a problem for the Ministry having to erase more people's memories, but it is more fun.
It is more fun. It's a little bit, sillier that he's not in trouble for that, because she could have got hit by a plane or like floated into the sun, whereas when it's just her bouncing around the ceiling, it's like whatever, it's fine.
Oof, or a helicopter. Yikes.
Yeah. I also love while she floats away, there's a great moment where Dudley is just sitting and watching TV still. Yeah. Just completely unaffected. And there's like 3 TVs in the shot. I just thought that was a good little... Because it's a thing, the kind of the characterization we always get of Dudley, and we don't get as much of time with the Dursleys in the movies. And so I thought that one little moment was a good... kind of helped encapsulate and really cement what Dudley's character is. I like that they make the Dementors fly. In the book, they're never described as they float.
They float a couple inches off the ground,
but they can't
don't actually fly.
Or at least it doesn't seem they can fly. And I like it's scarier when they're flying around. It looks really cool when they fly around, and it kind of just makes sense. I mean, if they can float, sure, they can fly. Like I just think it kind of makes sense and looks really neat. So I actually really don't mind them being able to fly in the movie.
I liked that the movie has Mr. Weasley just tell Harry about Sirius Black instead of the book kind of goes through this like rigmarole of like having Harry overhear them and then Mr. Weasley comes to tell him. I know. Yeah, and then Harry's like, no, it's cool because now you're not breaking your promise. I already know.
Yeah.
But The movie just has Mr. Weasley tell him, which I think
he would.
I think he would, yeah.
I think it
cuts out all of that rigmarole, like I said, it's in his character. He would tell him.
He would tell Harry, yeah. I thought it was a fun gag when they go to meet Buckbeak, and there's a bunch more hippogriffs in the book. There's like 6 of them, and Buckbeak's just one of them.
Yeah.
I don't mind it's just him. That's fine. But I like that there's just a fun gag in the movie where when Hagrid asks for volunteers and everybody steps back.
Yeah.
And you notice Neville drops out of frame. He just whoop, dips down out of the shot. And it's very funny. And Harry just doesn't realize, and then he's the only one forward. That was a fun gag. In the book, Harry just... with some coaxing, basically volunteers.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun little gag, and
I also liked in that scene that Hagrid just scoops him up and puts him on Buckbeak's back. Yeah. He doesn't really have a choice.
No.
Hagrid's just up you go.
Yeah. I also don't hate in that scene that there's and they set it up in the last movie, and I don't hate it overall throughout doing this more, which they don't do in the books, is setting up the romantic tension between Ron and Hermione. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really... I know some people might not like it. It doesn't really bother me that there's these little moments. It feels realistic, and it feels sort of natural, and I think they did it just a little, one little moment here, where she grabs his hand or whatever for a second. It's the little moment at the end where they kind of awkward hugging each other. And just little stuff like that throughout that I thought it does a good job sort of leading up the build up to their eventual relationship. So I kind of like adding that stuff. I also like that during the Buckbeak scene that I didn't remember liking. I remember not liking this when I first saw it, but I don't mind that he flies all over Hogwarts on Buckbeak. It's cool. It's fun. You get to see Hogwarts and you get to see all the different, the new locations that they have and stuff, and flying over the lake. It looks pretty good. And in the book, he just flies around the paddock, above their heads, a few times and then lands. Yeah. Which is fine. But I just thought it was more interesting. And like I said, it was cool to get to see, since they did sort of expand the setting of Hogwarts a lot, to kind of fly around and see it all was kind of cool.
Yeah. And in the book, Harry does not like flying on Buckbeak.
No. And I think I do like that he kind of enjoys it, ends up enjoying it. He's apprehensive.
It's kind of an inconsequential change, and it adds a nice note of positivity. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and it also just, I feel like he would. Yeah, he's at first he's like, I'm not sure I like this. I prefer a broom. But then eventually, as he gets used to it, he kind of he would get used to it, and it's not like he's scared of heights or flying or speed.
Yeah. I liked the ice as a visual warning to the Dementors, because that's not in the book.
No, it gets cold.
Yeah, they talk about it feeling cold, but I liked...
Things don't freeze.
Yeah, I liked that kind of visualness that the movie brought to it.
Yeah, it's creepy, and it's slow, where everything just sort of slowly starts, and the sounds of the ice creaking, and it's cool, and it's very atmospheric, and I thought it was a good idea to kind of announce their arrival. I also like that when Harry's practicing making a Patronus, they change what his happiest memory is into something completely not in the book. In the book, he does the whole, the first time I was flying, and then eventually I think he settles on when he found out he was a wizard, right?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's what he ultimately settles on. In the movie, they change it to, he says, I have this memory of my parents just talking to me. Yeah. And he goes, I don't even know if it's a real memory. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was an important thing to say, because I was like, well, he wouldn't have a memory of his parents. Probably wouldn't have a memory of his parents talking to him, because he was a 3-month-old baby when they died. But I like that he says, I don't even know if it's a real memory. It's just them there, and it's just my parents. And I thought that was a really good. It just adds a little more heart to that moment, and that his happiest memory has to do with his family and his parents, and it just adds more sadness too, and that.
Yeah, more
because he's
kind
lost
of a
them.
bittersweet.
Yeah, I just thought that was a pretty smart change. A really big change that I thought was really clever in the movie, and I probably wouldn't have liked the first time, is I like that Harry sees Peter Pettigrew on the map.
I have a note about that too, because I thought that was such a good ad that I actually forgot that was not in the book.
I did the same thing until I was rereading it. Yeah,
when Lupin ends up getting the map, I finished that scene, and then I was like, wait a minute, why didn't
he mentioned...
Why didn't he mention it? Where was that? And I was like flipping back,
Yeah.
like trying to find it. Like, did I miss the part where he sees Pettigrew on the map? But it's not in the book.
It's not in the book. So in the movie, there's a moment where he sees Peter Pettigrew and he kind of remembers like that they had mentioned Peter Pettigrew died. And he's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And he goes to investigate and he's walking down the hall and he doesn't see anything. Mm-hmm. And I knew that wasn't in the book, but yeah. And he goes and he doesn't see anything, and it's because it's Scabbers is
right.
He's a rat and he's running around the floor. And I thought that was a really clever scene.
Yeah.
Like, it's really clever. It's a good ad. It gives us a little more, like, it adds a little bit more breadcrumbs to the mystery and helps make sense that Lupin figures it out a lot more quickly, because now he's like, wait, you saw Peter on...
So now he's looking for it.
He's looking for it, yeah.
And it also helps explain why in the Shrieking Shack at the end, Harry is so quick to be like, okay, I'll hear out this story.
Yeah.
Because he's seen
Peter Pettigrew on the map, and he's like, well, that was weird, yeah. Yeah. I thought that was a brilliant addition that I'm surprised it wasn't in the book. I bet that's one of those ones that J.K. Rowling was like, that was really good. I like that Hermione punches Malfoy and doesn't slap him. Mm-hmm. That's way better. She just punches him square in the nose. In the book, she slaps him, which is fine.
Both good.
But
a punch is more satisfying.
Punch is way more satisfying. Just very, very happy they made her punch her. I really like that they add more of the time loop stuff.
Yes.
The little details.
Yeah.
So they do the same thing where they loop the time. She uses the time turner in the book, and goes back. But the only real thing that like happens is Harry seeing himself do the Dementor or do the Patronus and thinking it's his dad, and then realizing, oh, it was me that did that, and then him doing it.
Yeah.
They add a lot more of that in the movie, and I really like that. I just like that type of stuff. It's very satisfying and fun to me.
I thought they made the time travel scene way more interesting. Because in the book, actually, a lot of it is like them sitting around.
Yeah.
And like watching for themselves.
Yeah. Because they're waiting for like an hour and a half while they're like in the Shrieking Shack and stuff. Yeah. But I like that, like when Hermione throws the rocks to like warn them that the people are coming, and we don't, because it's fun too. The first time you're watching it, you're like, what was that? Like the first time you're watching the movie, and if you don't know what is going to happen, you're like, what was that rock? Like, you're like super, I just love when that's all clinks into place. It's like, oh, that's so cool. Like that. And then her calling the wolf and it running out and all those little things that loop back. I always love that kind of stuff. And so I was glad they added more.
And I also like that Buckbeak saved them from werewolf
from the
Lupin.
werewolf Lupin, yeah.
My last note I have
I have some more, but go for it.
Better in the movie. I like that when they get back to when Dumbledore's closing the doors.
Oh, yeah.
And they get back, and they're like, we did it. And he just says, did what?
And walks away, yeah. That was good. I like that. I don't love everything about this Dumbledore, about Michael Gambon's Dumbledore, but he has his moments. Yeah. He's a lot more up and down, and he's just hashtag not my Dumbledore. But he has his moments, and that was a good one. So a couple other little ones I have. I really like the time loop effect, the time turner effect when they go back and everything backs up around them in the movie. And the other thing I really like about it is that in the book when they do that, she turns the time turner and they end up in the hall. Like
they're in a different place.
They're in a different place, which makes no sense.
That makes zero sense.
So that it transports them through space as well as time in the book, and that makes no sense. I like that they just are still in the exact same place that they were just back in time. That makes a lot more sense, and I never understood in the book why when they do that, they end up randomly in the Great Hall or like the entrance hall after they do the time turner in the hospital. I'm like, wait, what?
I did have the thought that they should have like gone in a closet or something before they did it, because I'm like, you don't know who was in here at 3:00 or whatever.
You don't want to be standing in the middle of a hospital and just like, what? And somebody's just there, like Madame Pomfrey's just there, like, what?
What? Where'd you come from?
I also love that you notice there's a constant ticking in the movie. Once they do the time turner, the background there's a constant like. I thought that was cool. I liked that. It added to the tension and also was just reminded you like that we're traveling through time here. I like that they switch Sirius to being locked in the tower instead of being in a classroom, because I was thinking about this as I was reading the book this time. I was like, how in the world? This doesn't make any practically makes no sense. How in the world, if they're going to take Buckbeak up to a window and have him fly in place next to it in a position that Sirius can get out of the window onto Buckbeak?
It's a good question.
Because Buckbeak has like a 10-foot wingspan.
Yeah.
If he's hovering next to the window, he's going to be... his body where they're riding is going to be, in order for him to keep flapping his wings, he would have to be like 10 feet from the window.
Maybe he backs his butt up to the window.
That's what I was wondering. Did he back up to the... because that would be impressive, but I'm not sure if that's what they were going for. I don't know. I just thought it made more sense for them just to go up to a tower and grab him, because then I didn't have to figure out how to make it look like he's hovering next to a window and Sirius climbing out and getting on. They drop Snape from the end of the hospital scene, which I think makes a lot of sense. At the end, Snape barges in after Sirius escapes and is like, they had something to do with this, blah, 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 blah. Like, he's all outraged.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me because, for one thing, Hermione, Dumbledore or somebody says, unless you know a way where they could be in two places at once, they're right here. How could they have had anything to do with Sirius getting away? I'm like, well, Snape's a teacher, and he knows that Hermione has a time turner.
Yeah. I mean, presumably he does, yeah.
Like, he would have to. She says in the book that all the teachers know. Like, McGonagall had to write a bunch of letters and do all kinds of stuff, and so I was like, he knows about the time turner, but he doesn't say anything, but he's mad about it. But is he mad? Because we also know, ultimately he's like a double agent type thing, but like... but he still has his own motivations, and he wouldn't be mad if they got expelled. I was like, I don't know. Like, it's just weird. It's just not having him involved at all at the end just cleans all that up. And I was like, I didn't have to think about it. And I was like, that's smart. And one little thing that the movie did that I thought was brilliant, and I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was just a happy accident, but there's this little moment where, because Snape isn't unconscious, when he comes, when Lupin turns into a werewolf, Snape runs out and he confronts Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And he's like, hey, we gotta go, you're in trouble, whatever. And then he whips around and sees the werewolf, or sees Lupin. In that split second, when you're watching, you see, he sees the werewolf and he goes, whoa! And he puts his arms out and like protects them. Yeah. And it's a little brief moment.
But it's a little tell.
Yes. It's a little tell into his actual... sort of motivations, and what's going on with him is that despite the fact that he fucking hates these kids, like he actively does despise them, deep down he does care and wants to protect them. And it's a little thing, just the way he puts his arms out. I was like, ooh, 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 I see you. All right, so yeah, that was all I had for better in the movie. Let's do our last 3 Muggle questions and then go on to the movie. Nailed it.
Is there something special about the chocolate that Lupin keeps feeding Harry? We get it. It helps.
No, it's just chocolate. Nothing special about it. It's just chocolate, and it makes you feel better. That's kind of the joke of it.
Chocolate is the best medicine.
Yeah, that's basically kind of the joke of it. I mean, and the whole idea behind it being that because the Dementors sort of suck joy and happiness out of you, that the cure for that is just eating a little bit of chocolate.
Yeah.
Like bringing that warmth and happiness back into you.
Is there a backstory in the book on the dudes who are carrying heads on horseback? What's their story?
Is there a backstory on the dudes on horseback carrying heads? The answer to that is yes. And I knew they showed up in a movie. I knew they showed up in one of the movies. That's the Headless Hunt, I would assume.
From Chamber of Secrets.
Chamber of Secrets, which we talked about in the last episode. Harry goes to the death day party from Nearly Headless Nick, and Nick's very disappointed that he can't get into the Headless Hunt, which is a group of ghosts that all have had their heads cut off.
So it's a group of criminals, is what it is.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, it's a bunch of criminals. But they have all had their heads cut off, and they run around and do...
They do head
stuff. They juggle their heads and play head polo and stuff. Yeah. And so that was a callback to that, is what that was. That was a couple members of the Headless Hunt. Although normally they're not at Hogwarts. Yeah. They're like doing their own thing. They kind of only came to Hogwarts in the second book because of Nick's party. But whatever. That's what that was.
I think I know the answer, but just to clarify, Lupin, Dumbledore, everyone was convinced that Sirius Black killed Peter Pettigrew. Even though they had been friends, they maybe knew his character, everyone was convinced he killed Peter Pettigrew. Yes?
And yeah, everybody was convinced that Sirius killed Pettigrew because, and it's not made super clear, well, it's because they kind of changed the setup for the whole Secret Keeper thing. In the book, it's very clear. Everybody knew about the Secret Keeper thing. Well, I say everybody that was involved and knew the whole story with the Potters and everything and them hiding from Voldemort. knew that Sirius was the secret keeper. So he was the only person in the movie, they're like, very few people knew that's not how it was in the book. Only Sirius was supposedly knew where they were.
Yeah.
And was their secret keeper. And nobody knew that he switched it to Pettigrew.
Yeah.
Secretly before. And so they all everybody's under the impression that he played out how we saw it play out, where that Black turned, sold the Potters out, and then when Pettigrew came to confront him afterwards, he killed Pettigrew. And so that's kind of just what they all assume. And that's what everybody believes. But it turns out that it's not the case.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian and Katie. Appreciate you guys having me back on This Film is Lit. I actually have a new podcast, my radio show. The KCMQ Morning Shag with Shags and Trevor now has a podcast. You can hear our best bits from every week. It's called the KCMQ Morning Shag Best of Podcast. You can get it now at kcmq.com or wherever you download your podcasts.
Pettigrew faked his own death, made it look like Sirius blew him up.
Yep. Which isn't funny, or not funny, but I was like, in the fourth book, we get this whole big thing about the unforgivable curses. Mm-hmm. So, there's the three, Imperio, Crucio, and Avada Kedavra. Mm-hmm. And Avada Kedavra is the killing curse. It's the curse you use to kill somebody.
Yeah. And
it's this big thing. It's unforgivable. If you ever use it on somebody, you go to jail, or you go to Azkaban for the rest of your life, or whatever. But the thing that's hilarious to me is, I think you should have at least a fourth spell in there, and it's whatever the fuck Peter Pettigrew did to blow up an entire city street worth of people. Yeah. Maybe that one. I don't know what that was. But now maybe that's not. Maybe it was some sort of practical. Maybe it's maybe he. Because they never go into details of exactly what he did. He just killed 13 people, and maybe he made a fire that blew up something. You know what I mean? Maybe it wasn't an actual something that killed them. It was just he made an explosion that killed them or something, so that the curse itself wasn't really what the problem. I don't know. But anyways, I was like, what was that? What was that killing 13 people with one spell thing? Also, Peter Pettigrew, notoriously the least talented of all these people, somehow gets the best of Sirius Black, who's the most talented of these. How does he best Sirius Black, kill all these people, and get away from him? I'm like, oh man. All I'm saying is maybe Sirius Black is an inside job. Maybe calling into question Sirius's story here. I don't know. I'm not sure it all adds up. All right, the movie nailed it. Let's talk about it.
Nailed it.
I love The Night Bus. I know we had a few problems. I do actually have here, don't love The Shrunken Head, but I think the rest of it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think the look of it's great. I like Stan Shunpike. I think he's kind of perfectly reminiscent of the Stan from the book, and Ern with his big glasses, kind of exactly what I would imagine with the old driver of the bus. And the look of it, with the beds and everything, I think pretty much perfect. Other than, The Shrunken Heads is kind of whatever. It's monster book of monsters, adequately creepy and fun in a dumb way. The Dementors, I thought, looked perfect.
Yes.
Kind of to how I would imagine Dementors would look. It's a little disappointing, like you said, that we don't get to see one of them pull their head
with the face,
pull their cloak down, because that would have been cool. But the actual look of them.
Yeah, they are creepy, and I like that they don't just look like the typical depiction of death.
Yeah, they could very easily just look like the ring wraiths from Lord of the Rings, and they went an extra level with them. And we talked about it a little bit because they were going to use puppets, but they did a lot of puppet tests with them underwater, and then used that to influence the CGI of them so that they're always kind of floaty and looks like they're always in water. Lupin is great, I think.
Yes.
I can't remember the actor's name. David Thewlis.
Yeah,
something like
that.
I think he's brilliant. I think he does a perfect Lupin. Pretty much spot on. I think he's perfectly sanguine. Is that the word? Sort of pitiful, but also powerful when he needs to be, and he plays sick well.
Yeah.
And looking sickly well, but he's also very, he does a good job with Harry, and their interactions always feel very real and heartwarming, and he's very fatherly to him, and I just think he does a great job.
Yeah, no, totally.
I like that they have the little sign showing that Hogsmeade is down when they first get to Hogwarts. And because I always had a question about where the hell Hogsmeade was, and I guess we don't really ever get a better answer even in the movie. I just like, because you never hear about it until the third book, and all of a sudden it's like, and they're like, they go there from school. I'm like, so wait, there's a whole magic...
the village.
The village. I'm like, what village? We've never heard about a village. Apparently there's a little magical village, but when in the movie, when they first show up to Hogwarts at the beginning, there's a little like road sign, and it's like, Hogwarts, Hogsmeade. And it's like got a little arrow pointing off to the other way. I was like, that's fun.
I like Buckbeak.
Yeah, no, Buckbeak's perfect. It looks great.
Yeah.
He's steely gray, like he's described, and he looks really cool. And I think he might be a little too handsome though, or a little too, because in the book, Hagrid's like, isn't he beautiful or something like that, and they're all like, eh. But in the movie, I'm like, yeah, it just looks like a beautiful horse, like bird thing, like it's real, yeah.
So he's a handsome boy.
Yeah, Trelawney. Yeah. And her little room, specifically her lair, is kind of exactly what I always imagined, with the smoke-filled fortune teller's lair. And what's her? I can't remember that actress's name. She's in tons of stuff. Who plays Trelawney? But
it's
yeah, she's got a name that I can never remember.
No, it's Emma something. Emma Thompson.
Thompson, and I get that's what it is. It's her name is I get it confused with like a million. There's Emma Stone, Emma Watson, Emma Thompson. I'm like, yeah. But yeah, I thought she did a great job. And I really like, again, I mentioned it before, but they capture it a little bit in the movie is Hermione's just complete lack of chill for divination and just how she's just like, this is fucking dumb. I'm like, I don't know. I always just liked how mean she was.
Aside from a couple small things, I like the Bogart scene.
Yeah, I have that on here too. The Bogart scene, other than I don't love the moon change.
The moon thing, and then the other thing that bothers me is that the fucking clown is scarier than the snake. So, like, what the fuck, Parvati? Like, what?
Yeah, Parvati or however you pronounce it.
It's so much scarier.
It's way scarier. I was like, it's not funnier. But I do like that they changed Ron to put roller skates on it, because I thought that was... it's more visually interesting, but also like funnier than in the book. He just takes all of its legs off, so it rolls around. I'm like, that's still terrifying. I don't want a big spider like thorax rolling at me. Like, that's not funny. Like, I don't want to. I'm just picturing like the Indiana Jones and the boulder rolling. He's such a giant spider body. No, thank you. Put it on roller skates. That's way better. Yeah. And I really like the opening shot of that scene. It's really cool where it's the mirror shot and they come through the mirror and then spins around. There's some really, really cool cinematography in this movie and like really interesting camera moves. He does a lot of like pulling up and spinning and sort of stuff that's really neat. And I like a lot of lots of shots where the camera is rotating and it's sort of very reflective of the clock and all the gears, and the camera moves in a similar way a lot where it rotates. And I think that kind of ties into the themes of the time and all that. That was really interesting. A really well shot movie. I like that they have the Great Hall sleepover. Yeah. It's a little thing, but that they all just camp out in the Great Hall after the Black tries to break into the Gryffindor common room. Marauders map is awesome.
Yes, I love the Marauders map.
So cool. Pretty much the best way I could imagine doing, because it's a very complicated thing to try to visualize, I feel like, where you can see all these people walking and names. And I like that they add all these extra, because Hogwarts is such a crazy layout, I like that it looks like the map has like weird little fold out parts that like, it's not just like a one big square. Yeah. It's like you gotta fold it a million different ways and like origami it open to like get, it just makes sense for me with a place as weird and complicated as Hogwarts that the map would be like really, really weird. Little thing, they got Hagrid wearing a suit that's mentioned for the horrible for the trial. The hairy brown suit with the orange and yellow tie is mentioned specifically. And I always wondered, like, is that a thing for wizards? Hairy suits? Or is that just a thing for Hagrid? What?
It seems like it's just a Hagrid thing.
I know, but it's just like, wouldn't nobody be like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you wearing a hairy suit? That's real weird.
With a clown tie.
Yeah, but I love that they had that. It's a little thing like it's funny because they have that little detail, but like, or in the first or the second one with they didn't have the lime green bowler for Cornelius Fudge, and it was like, those little things, or sometimes they have them and sometimes they don't. I think the Shrieking Shack looks awesome, and the way Shrieking Shack And the way it moves, I actually remember reading or seeing a thing about how they built it. The set actually is moving. Like you can see it in the background, like when they're standing there, like the walls are moving. And they built like a big set where the walls shifted, so it just like adds to the old creaky weird nature of it. And the last thing I had, I don't know if you have anything else.
I have one more thing.
Okay.
The casting of Peter Pettigrew.
Oh, yeah.
Because, man, that guy gets so much mileage out of being unbelievably hideous.
Yep. And looking like a rat.
Yeah.
He very much has the features, the human-like features of a rat man. So, good for him. But yeah, the casting for him was pretty spot on. I've seen that guy in a few other things, but yeah, he nails the ratty look. My last one was they nailed the obtuse and infuriating nature of the Shrieking Shack conversation, where, and it's maybe the first time you read it, it's not as annoying. But and we were joking about it when we were watching it this time, but there's so much where they take so long, and it's even worse in the book, to get to the meat of the conversation and to explain anything. Yeah. Where they're just back and forth, like misunderstanding each other, and not sure what's going on, and making vague, veiled, like cryptic.
And I'm like, why are you being cryptic right now? Just say what you need to say.
Yeah, and it's like there's a line in the movie where Sirius is like, Harry says something about killing me, and Sirius, I don't remember what he says, but he says something.
Hermione says, you'll have to kill me, or you'll have to kill us
if you want to kill Harry, and
he just says, only one will die tonight. Why would you be cryptic in that moment?
Come on! Now, you can kind of explain it away that he's been in Azkaban, he's a little off, he hasn't exactly been brushing up on his conversational skills in the last 12 years. But yeah, it's a little like, come on, man. Come on, let's not make weird, cryptic, veiled threats when you're just trying to explain.
Just like, no, actually, I just want the rat because...
I just want the rat. The rat is Peter Pettigrew.
And I just want to kill... I actually I don't care about killing you.
No, I don't want to kill any of you. Actually, Harry, it's really good to see you again. Me and my dad, it's all a misunderstanding. Like, just go on and say it. But no, we got to sit here and make cryptic fucking back and forth for 10 minutes, or we still can't decide if you're actually going to kill him or not, or what's going on, and... Yeah, but yeah, I thought that was... It's like, they nailed that. They nailed my annoyance with the book in that regard. It's just like, just say what you need to say. Say it. Just explain yourself. I had a few more things that didn't really fit into a category that I just wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I have a couple things. We already touched on a few.
Yeah, we probably touched on some of mine, too.
One thing I noticed that I don't think I didn't remember this. Why does Tom, who works at the Leaky Cauldron, look like fucking Igor?
Yeah, I didn't remember that. They decided to. So Tom is mentioned in the book, and he is the head, the guy who owns the Leaky Cauldron.
Yeah, he's the innkeep.
He's the that's the word I was looking for. The innkeep at the Leaky Cauldron. But they decided in the movie to make him the hunchbacked assistant, like where he's like very awkward and like weird,
it's so
strange.
Weird.
And it was a very interesting choice because in the book he's just
like an old man.
He's just like an old man, yeah.
And they say that he doesn't have any teeth. Yeah. But that's like the only
he's just
description.
An old man in Britain. Yeah. So. But yeah, they're like, let's make him, because he's like grabs Harry and like drags him around, and it's interesting. I didn't hate it, but it was like, that's not okay, fine, whatever. Sure.
Yeah, it's just like why?
Just to make it more interesting, like a quirky character. I did like some of the stuff in the Leaky Cauldron, like when the housekeeping lady and like little things like that I thought were fun. Yeah, where the housekeeping lady gets like screamed at by a monster or whatever. Who is that kid, the Dyer kid who exists? He's only in this movie. There's this character in this movie. People, we talk about this. I forgot about this kid. He's in the trailer.
Look, Grim. Taking form of a giant spectral dog. It's among the darkest omens in our world. It's an omen of death.
Because he has 2 lines in the movie, and they're both just like super dramatic, like...
So they have, like, really dramatic, like, exposition
lines. And he's never in any of the... I mean, maybe he's in the movies in the future, but he's not a named character from the book, I don't think. I don't know who he would correspond to, but he's a Gryffindor.
Yeah.
But he also appears to be a Gryffindor in their age, which wouldn't make any sense. If he's a Gryffindor in their year, there's only 5 of them, and we know who they all are. It's Seamus Dean. He's not Dean.
He would be in the dormitory with them.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He'd be in the dormitory with them, but he's not.
Who is this kid?
So anyway, this kid, but in the movie, all he does, he has 2 lines. He in Professor Trelawney's room, they're like, "What's the Grim?" And this kid's just like, "The Grim is the sign of death." And I'm like, "What? Who are you?" Like all the students are like, "Who's this guy? Who's this kid?" But like he explains what the Grim is.
Yeah.
Like in a very dramatic way. And then he has later in the movie, he has another line, and I can't remember what, where it's just, there's like, he just drops a line of exposition about like Sirius Black or something.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, yeah, like, he could be here to kill you, Harry. I'm like, what? Who are you?
Who are you?
And again, I don't think he's ever in any of the other movies. I don't think.
Well, he's definitely not in the first 2. I guess we'll see if he's in the upcoming ones.
And most of the characters in the movies, even if we don't hear their names ever, do correspond to like named characters in the book. Like Parvati, who you mentioned earlier, the Patil twins are in them, and they show up more in like the later ones. And Dean Thomas and Seamus, obviously all the people in Harry's year and that sort of thing. And like, but even like some of the minor like Slytherin characters, like Marcus Flint, we see at times, and eventually we see Blaze Zabini or whatever his name is.
We saw Millicent Bulstrode in this one.
Yeah,
I think that's supposed to be her.
Or because Pansy Parkinson, I think also shows up.
That could have been her.
But anyway, so there's all these like minor characters who are like, you know, in super minor and not really important, but they just kind of flesh out the students in the school. But yeah, this kid, not any of those, and we don't know who he is.
We don't. Mystery. Could be anyone.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I realized they don't have Cho Chang in this.
Yeah, no, they don't.
Cho Chang is in the book. So Cho Chang, the eventual love interest of Harry, or first love interest of Harry, she shows up, and I forgot she plays Seeker. Mm-hmm. She's the Seeker for Ravenclaw in this one. Yeah.
And he thinks she's real cute.
She's like, oh, she's so pretty. And now I'm going to go beat her at Quidditch. Oh, I love, too, and this is a weird thing, in Professor Trelawney in Divination on the first day basically says, some of you will have a natural ability for this. If you don't, I can't do anything for you. So should we leave? Like... What kind of class is that? Where literally on the first day you show up to the class and the teacher goes, all right, like 10% of you will be able to do this. The rest of you, I don't even know why you're here. Basically, is what, like, you might as well not be here. Like,
I guess you have to go to find out if you're in that 10%.
Yeah, it's just like such a useless class. It's like, all right, well, cool. In the book, it makes 0 sense. So we only get 1 Quidditch match in the movie. In the book, the first Quidditch match is supposed to be, it ends up being against Hufflepuff in the movie. In the book, it was supposed to be against Ravenclaw, or Slytherin.
Yeah.
Slytherin ends up getting its match rescheduled against Gryffindor to later in the year because Malfoy's arm was injured.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. We have so many times, they lost, Gryffindor lost the cup the first year, or the second year, they lost their 3rd game because they had to play without Harry. And because Harry was in the hospital wing. And like, what? So how do you decide if you have to play or if you get to reschedule? Like, it makes no sense.
Maybe they couldn't reschedule because it was so close to the end of the school year.
Yeah, maybe that's the answer. But I was just like, they don't do, you would have a backup. You don't, if one of your guys gets hurt, you don't reschedule the game. You just get another person or you deal with it. Like, that's not how that works. I was really annoying.
In the time travel part, when, well, kind of in both, when Hermione is watching herself from the forest and she cracks the tree branch or whatever, and then the other Hermione, the first Hermione, turns around, and she's like, I thought I saw Nevermind. I like the implication that Hermione saw herself
but didn't,
and chooses to dismiss it because she knows she has the time turner.
Oh, that would be interesting. I didn't take it that way. She's like, that'll make sense eventually.
I'm just not even gonna.
That'll make sense in like an hour. Like, I don't know. It's been a weird year. Let me just tell you, it's been a weird year. Also, the whole time turner thing is a whole bag of worms on its own.
Yeah.
I think I've heard interviews that I'm speaking way out of turn and might just be making this up, but I thought I heard J.K. Rowling say, like, I wish I hadn't introduced the time turner as a thing, because she kind of just gets rid of it after, like, it's such a powerful, wild thing that we can literally turn back time, and then we never use it again or do anything with it for the rest of the books.
No, it never comes up again.
No, and I think it's because J.K. Rowling was like, it's too complicated, and it's like, it gets too weird, and like, it does come up in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
Oh, can we not?
I'm pretty sure. Unless I'm misremembering. Because there's time travel in that, and it's a nightmare, and they retcon everything and ruin the whole everything.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. That's why you can't have something like that, because it's an automatic retcon for anything that happens.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would have to assume that there's some kind of limit on how far you can go back.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know.
Because if 3 turns takes you back like 3 hours, then you have to turn it so many times.
Yep. It's silly. There's a good idea to abandon it.
Yeah, and then like, I mean, maybe we just don't know more about it, but like, it seems like all you can do is live out that time.
Yeah.
Like, you have to just wait and go through it again. So like,
I don't know. I don't remember. Some of that I think gets addressed in Cursed Child, but it's been a long time, and I blocked it out of my memory as soon as I finished reading it. So, they cut out Ron getting his leg broke.
Yeah,
which makes sense because that was horrifying. Like his leg snaps when he's getting dragged into the tree. And they end up just being the wound from the dog, which that's. There's a moment in the second Quidditch match where before the match, Harry says he put his wand in his t-shirt under his robes, and I'm like,
but where?
Where do wizard shirts have wand pockets?
Oh my god, I hope so.
I'm wondering, because I remember reading that and I remember reading that as a kid. I had a very vivid moment rereading this. There, I was like, I remember reading that as a kid and going, but where in your t-shirt? What? T-shirts don't. It's a wand. What? Like, where do you put a wand in a t-shirt? It doesn't make any sense. And so, yeah, maybe it has like a wand pocket or something.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
know. And I also think it's interesting that he says he's gonna kill Sirius Black in the Shrieking Shack at one point. He pulls out a wand. He's like going to do it. And they kind of cut this from the movie. I don't remember the exact. Like, there's a moment where he's like going to do it, and then he ends up deciding not to. And I'm like, what were you gonna do, Harry?
Yeah, right. He doesn't know how to kill anyone.
How are you gonna kill him with your wand? What are you gonna do there? You know, like 8 spells. Are you gonna Expelliarmus him to death? Like, what? Like, what are you gonna do? You don't know. We establish in the next book that that's when you learn about how to kill people with a wand.
Right.
Like, you know, so weird. I was like, all right, okay. I'm not sure what you thought was gonna happen, but I also thought it was interesting that there's only been 7 animagi in a century.
Yeah,
we learned in the book. That seems.
I feel like, I mean, they do say that like it's hard, and not a lot of people are capable of doing it. But that still seems
really low.
Because I feel like that would be
super useful.
Yeah,
cool.
It would be. I feel like that would be something that a lot of people would want to do
just for fun.
Yeah, and maybe maybe a lot of people do try to do it and they can't. Yeah, maybe that's the case.
But yeah, because they said there's only 7 registered in a century, and McGonagall's the last one.
Yeah,
most recent one who's become an animagus, and I was like. So it's that hard and that rare, but 3 motherfucking kids learned how to do it in one school class, like in one. They said it took them 5 years to learn how to do it, but because they said it wasn't until their 5th year that they figured out how to do it. But still, I was just like 3 kids all figured out how to do it, and somehow there's only 7. I feel like there's a lot of unregulated animagi out there running around.
Well, we do find out about at least one more unregistered, Rita Skeeter.
Oh yeah, because she's not registered. Yeah, that's right. She turned into a bug.
But I feel like, I'm like, if I were a wizard or a witch, and I found out about that, I'd be like, okay, goals.
I'm learning to turn into a hawk or something. I'm learning to turn into a bird of prey that I can fly around and, are you kidding me? It'd be amazing. Be so cool. Yeah, it's weird. I was like, whatever. 7? All right. You guys need to up your imagination game. Why are you all not animals? I don't understand. That's all I got for general notes.
I just had one more note. This movie has probably my favorite end credits.
Oh, yeah, because it's the Marauders map.
Yeah,
it's really cool. Yeah, it's just like the names up on the Marauders map and the footprints everywhere. Yeah, really neat. Let's do it. It's the final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterwards.
It's the book.
Yeah, the book's better. It's really definitely the book's better. This movie's good. I really actually, again, on rewatching it, I think it's probably the best of the first 3 films so far. I might prefer. I think currently, if I had to rate it, I think I would put this as my top now. I like the changes they made. I think they made a lot of smart changes. There's some really glaring problems with, like I said, not explaining Mooney and Wormtail and Padfoot and Prongs and stuff. But that, not explaining that isn't necessarily a problem for me as a book reader, because I know. You know what I mean? It's not like a plot hole in the sense of, like, it doesn't add up, because it's just they didn't explain it to people who have no idea. Like, people would just be like, what? Okay. But for me, it didn't matter. I knew what it was and who they were and all that sort of stuff. So I think they made a lot of smart changes. I really like the visual style of it. I like the way it's shot. I like the settings and the set decoration and sort of the darker, more lived-in version of Hogwarts that we see. Yeah. I really enjoyed. I thought it was really good. But still, the book, it's a great book. And
this is my favorite book.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not my favorite, but it's close. It's up there. I like this one a lot. And I don't know why, I really like 5. I think I like the meandery, like, it feels less focused potentially than, it's been a long time since I read it, but I feel like I like sort of the mystery of 5. I think also I like those later ones, like with 5 and 6. I liked that the story was in motion and we were really getting somewhere, but there was also all these cliffhangers, and that was around the time where the internet I was really getting in big on the internet and like reading fan theories and stuff. So like I really like sort of all the weird like little mysteries that spawned from those ones when we start getting into the Department of Mysteries and all that kind of stuff. I thought it's really interesting. So I remember really liking those. We'll see when we get up there. And I also like 4. I like the Triwizard Tournament. I think it's just cool and fun. But yeah, they're all good. This is better than the first 2 books, I think. I think it's the best of the first 3 for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, the book is better. Spoilers, they're all going to be better, but that's not why you're here. You're here to hear us talk about it and what we liked and what we didn't like. That's going to do it for the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban episode of This Film Is Lit. As always, please go rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere else you download our podcast. Check us out on all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads. We have our subreddit. I believe that's everything. Until next time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else, keep reading books, keep watching movies, and keep being awesome.